Welcome to episode 217 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I chat with Nissan Motorsport's Nick Ryan on building a team and developing fans in motorsport.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who's ready to give his sports biz hot takes, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan. I'm here for your sports biz hot takes. Thank you for listening. You may be doing so on sportsgeekhq.com, your favourite podcast app. Might be Pocket Casts. It might be Google. You might be listening on your Amazon Echo. Whatever you are listening on, thank you very much. As always, you can contact me. Send me an email, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, at Sean Callanan, or at SportsGeek on most channels. If you want to send me a message on LinkedIn, say you listen to the podcast. I love getting those messages. So thank you very much for your feedback so far. Before we get into this episode with Nick Ryan from Nissan Motorsport, I just want to talk a little bit about the athlete digital training we've been planning and talking to a few clubs about. And it's really something that's ideal for player groups or coaching groups, coaches wanting to understand the digital landscape and where their players are active. And it's something a little bit more, because what we're finding is a lot of players are wanting to better understand the platforms, both from a marketing and personal brand promotional point of view, but then there's also the scarier side of the privacy and those kind of things. So we've got a few different sessions. We've got a primary one, which is around a group training session, which helps them understand, hey guys, this is what all the platforms are clamoring for athletes. Here's what Facebook wants. Here's what Instagram wants. Here's what Twitter wants. Here's some of the opportunities, helping them understand what platform might work for them, and then giving them some ideas around what content might work for them from a player point of view, and also how they can work better with the club in the content they're producing. And then also go through a few of the things around online privacy and security, both to protect themselves, but then also, their loved ones and the people close to them. Take them through a few scenarios that they should try to avoid, and then also talk a little bit about, I guess, social media and mindset and game day, and making sure that they find the right place for where social and digital is, but also making sure that's not affecting them on game day. And then opportunities for them to grow that digital presence, to grow their digital cheer squad, if you will, and potentially bring in some sponsorship rewards for them. So if you're interested, as always, you can reach out, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, or go to sportsgeekhq.com/social media athlete training. All one word. Well, my guest this week is Nick Ryan. He is GM at Nissan Motorsport and a Sports Geek Nation member. So it's great to get Sports Geek Nation members on the podcast. So we talk about supercars, which, if for my US audience, it's similar to NASCAR, I guess, but with street circuit and a series around street circuit. So it's in that same sort of space. But Nick explains it better than me. As I say in the interview, I'm no rev head. Here is my conversation with Nick Ryan from Nissan Motorsport. Very happy to be here at Sports Geek at Creative Cubes. My guest today is General Manager of Nissan. I've got to get it right for the people in Australia. That's how we say it in Australia. Nissan Motorsport. Nick Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, so I nearly did win to the Nissan, which is what our US friends would say. So give us a little bit of background of Nissan Motorsport, where they fit, and I guess the landscape of the sport before we get into your background.
Yeah, for sure. So Nissan Motorsport, we are the factory team of Nissan in supercars, which is now, was V8 Supercars, now just titled Supercars. So we are the biggest team in the category. We're a 4-car operation. There's 26 cars on the grid. So we're a turnkey business. We do everything from initial design, development, production, operation of racing our 4 supercars. We're a sizable business in terms of, a lot of people actually, to take that sideways, is a lot of people when they see us on TV and even sometimes at events, they just expect we're a side garage just down the street, and
which is how the sport started.
Which is how the sport started.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that, there's still that perception that exists after all these years, but really it's a much more sophisticated technological business now that, we're a business up the road in Brayside that's 5,500 square metres, 19 separate departments, 60 full-time staff, from all those aspects that I mentioned before about helping us to go racing each and every weekend throughout the season. So, we're a business going to our 10th year this year. We were a Holden-based team for a period of 4 years. The sport has gone through an enormous amount of change, and I'll reference some of those points today as we're chatting. But there was a program heading into 2013 called Car of the Future, which was really about evolving the sport. We had a period where it was a duopoly. It was Ford and Holden in competition for history. In going back a long time ago, there was other makes, but really for the modern day sport that we know, it was a Ford and Holden product. And this Car of the Future program was about future-proofing the sport and finding new avenues to entice and encourage new manufacturers to come in. And with that allowed these manufacturers that really were closed out the opportunity to come in and compete against these existing makes was nigh impossible, because the cost to do so would have just been prohibitive, and even competition would have been challenging. So this program allowed us. We were the first team to bring a new manufacturer in, which we did bring in Nissan. With full global backing. In terms of global backing, we had strong support, but really we still delivered all the technical aspects and everything around our product to go racing. And we've had that continuation with Nissan. This is going to our 6th year. Look, unfortunately, at the end of this year, Nissan is stepping away from supercars, and there's a number of reasons for it. I won't bore you and all your listeners with all of those, but some fundamentals around the future of Nissan and needing to race their hero product GTR in all the markets that they do. And unfortunately, supercars as a platform is not a suitable platform for that product right now. So, for us, we're a business that owns all the IP and everything that we race with what we've developed. So we'll continue with this product at least through next year as we take a view of what is the long-term future of the sport, and again, opportunities to encourage these new manufacturers. And there's a lot of change that's happening, and there's obviously a lot of change in the general marketplace for motorsport and motoring. But we're certainly at the forefront of that and looking at what the opportunities are for us next.
So supercars as a sport in Australia, because there's this perception of the sports business that it's all the ball sports. And if you look at the US, it's the big four or the big five if you include MLS of the NBA, NHL, NFL and MLB, and they're the sort of the sports. And then there's motorsport onto the to the side with, and it's a little bit the same in Australia. Where is supercars and motorsport positioned in Australia?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I think it's very misunderstood, motorsport, because it's not that traditional sport that people follow. And I'll speak about the challenges that brings, but the statistics don't lie. I mean, we're for our 16 events this year, we're the third most attended sport in the country. So where you relate all the other sports that we compete against, every game of AFL, any NRL, you go in cricket, A-League, whatever goes on and on and on. The fact over just 16 events that we have the third most attendance in collective for the season is quite enormous. 4th most watched in terms of broadcast hours that exist around the sport. But it is. It's just one of those sports that is, unfortunately, it's misunderstood, and that brings with it challenges. I mean, particularly when we're talking to a lot of commercial brands and you navigate your way through businesses, it's a non-traditional sport, and it's one that takes quite a bit of effort to explain and understand. But at the end of the day, there is some great statistics. It's a highly passionate audience. It's a very engaging sport. It's a highly accessible sport, and provides so much offering. So we've got a history of getting these brands in and getting these fans in, and once we're there, we keep them. But the recruitment and certainly for where the sport's heading in the future, that recruitment strategy is enormous. It's around what is this fan of the future, and I'm sure we'll get into that more today. But that's where the focus of that exists, because we've got this core audience and we've got a huge audience, and it is a national audience. We're one of the few national sports. We compete in every state in Australia. We compete in the Northern Territory. We go race over in New Zealand. We take the product to the people. We're in regional areas. We're in metro centres. They're amazing events. You sit there and we launch. Actually, we're in New Zealand coming up for this weekend here, which, over 100,000 people. We finish at Newcastle in 3 weeks' time. There's 195,000 went last year. We kick off round one next year, Adelaide, 300,000 people. These are big events.
And it is that, it's similar to, having a talk to Zara earlier this year around the F1. It's very, motorsport is that travelling circus and these major events dropping in every week, as opposed to, again, comparing to other sports of a week in, week out, or X many games at a one venue, and it's hyper local. You've got this, national travelling tribe circus, that people are. Oh well, here's the one time I can see it this year.
That's exactly right,
and it's a must attend for your fans.
That's right, and there lies some of the challenges that exist for the sport that you do have. You've got these highly passionate people, and the reality is, you're only in their region maybe once a year. It's not like I'm a passionate Carlton fan, but every
I feel for you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I can't believe I even brought that up.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
That's probably why I like motorsport so much. But for that is the reality for a lot of these fans. It becomes a broadcast product. We deliver an exceptional event experience, but the package does exist a lot for the fans and broadcast, because we are racing around the country and we do have these amazing events. But it's like any other sport. To travel to see the sport that you love is often expensive. So you need to make sure that the broadcast experience is enormous. The other challenge we have is the fact that there is breaks in between each of our events. We endeavour to be on the calendar every 2 weeks, but there are further breaks that exist. So you're off the radar, and that's hard. To maintain that level of consistency in as a sport and to stay relevant and in the media is challenging. We're always trying as a sport and as teams to maintain that level of consistency without just punching out any old content for whatever is the purpose for doing it. And that can work in your favor or against you, and some teams do an incredible job of it. And, I'd like to think that we do a pretty good job of finding the right way to connect with our fans, and we have big audiences. Our social audience is quite extraordinary. But they're the existing challenges that are for our sport, and finding ways that we can really fill those gaps for the fans so they remain engaged with us for the season, and then also finding that new fan. What's going to get them there, because a lot of the time, once we get people to, and the statistics show, once we get people to events, it's a real breaker for them. It's
lock them in real life, like this is what you've seen on TV, but it's larger and louder, and the total experience that really locks them in.
And there's certainly it's for a lot of people, they may ask what sport, what industry or something we're in, and the typical answer is motor racing or anything. It's entertainment.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Sport is entertainment, and unless we're relevant and exciting, and there's color and everything else, the noise that exists at motorsport, then you lose that. And the entertainment product we have is exceptional. Formula One is one that we talk about a lot. Formula One is such a technical business, such an amazing business in many respects, but I think they took their eyes off it. They changed the noise factor, which you can go to the Grand Prix here at Melbourne. We're a key part of that event, and you can sit you can stand next to the person and have a conversation where, part of the excitement and thrill of going to that sport was the fact that my ears were bleeding when I walked out of the joint. So
I live just down the road from here in Richmond, and I used to be able to hear practice and the sessions from here a couple of kilometres away, and the last couple of years, not so much.
No.
So I want to wind things back a little bit and find out how you got into sport, how you got into motorsport.
Yeah, for sure. It's for me, my career was looking likely to go a different direction. I originally was studying architecture of all things. It was something that I loved when I was growing up, and I'm not sure that my ambitions there were matched by the talent, and I realised in the piece that this probably wasn't for me a couple of years into my study, and then thinking about really what I wanted to do, and all my life I'm like sports mad, everything. It doesn't matter whether it's local sport, doesn't matter what version of sport it is. I think that's similar for a lot of Melburnians where, we'll go and watch a ball run around the MCG at any point in time. But for me, the diversion then to marketing, and it was always the end goal for me was sport. I was, sport is often a difficult business to crack in the first instance, but once you're in there and you really dedicate yourself to it, which I did, the doors open up. And for me, I got a bit of a lucky intro to it with a sports marketing company, and then moved on to another one that had involvement with a whole host of sports, a boutique sports marketing agency here, and we were involved in a lot of the strategy play for brands investing in sport, and also supporting rights holders as such around what their strategies were, and helping secure commercial sales and the likes within sports. I had exposure to some AFL, NRL. We were the platform rights to the NRL, looking after all their commercial rights. And then that went on to swimming, to cricket, and I had some terrific exposure. But in that business that I was for a number of years, they owned a share of a supercar team, V8 supercar team at the time. Yep. And for me, I had no interest in motorsport really growing up. I sort of, just as a general level, I'd have a look at F1 and that was exciting. But for me, for supercars, there was no one in my family that was passionate about it. And that's where you find a lot of these people are. I watched with dad, or I sat on the couch, or I went to an event.
Generational rev heads.
Yeah. And that is not my family. They do not have a mechanical bone in their within. But so once I got exposure to that sport, and it's like anything. Once you really see behind the scenes, you understand how the sport functions, see within the inner sanctum of this. It really excited me, and
I think it's it's interesting coming, because it's great coming to a sport as a fan of the sport, and you have that fan point of view. Yep. But then if you when you come to a sport, if I work with different sports, and I'm not a true passionate fan about all the sports I work with, it gives you a little bit of a cleaner view of it, and a little bit dispassionate, so you can sort of analyze the fans a little bit, see why they're passionate about things, without the color of this, I love this, and whether it's nostalgia and you have rose-colored glasses of this is how it used to be done and we should do this. Do you think that gave you a little bit of, I guess, clarity in looking at motorsport coming into it from that angle?
I think so. Like I mentioned before, the perception of the sport that we sit in a garage and just roll out a car that, was on the lot a week earlier. It was misunderstood for me, and seeing that and the competition side of the sport and the challenges that exist. I mean, for this sport I always say in this sport, when you win, you win. You really win. From all the factors of the technological development in your product to get to the track, from all the aspects of understanding that circuit and setting up your vehicle. When we set up our cars on a race weekend, I think it's in analysis from the technical guys, something like 32 million different combinations of setup you can have in a vehicle to apply that car to get it settled for whatever is the circuit. And circuits change from year to year from where they are. Then you've got the drivers on any given weekend, so the performance they're sitting there. Then you're talking about the assembly, so the finger work. It can be a $2 part. We've got a $600,000 race car. We've got four of them. But a $2 part, a valve or something can blow, kill your weekend. Yeah. Then at the end of the day, if you get everything right, everything's going exceptionally well, and someone drives into you, that's so far out of control. Or a pit stop goes wrong, like a gun fails, or all these kind of things that implicate, and that competition side of it just really excited me. But then also the business behind it, and that's my role within that. I run the entire business of what is Nissan Motorsport.
Yeah, so dive into the role as general manager. I guess everything's under your remit, but what does the team look like? Because again, like I look at it from a traditional, sports point of view, and effectively you're in the role running the team, but there's, performance and the technical side and the people running the cars, and then there's, the back office, bringing in the money and sponsorship and keeping it ticking over. Yeah. Like how does it work for you?
Yeah. So look in our business, and I mentioned 60 odd full-time staff, there is certainly a heavy weighting towards technical people in the business. Now, my role is across the entire business, but as it comes back to foundation of understanding, I'm not a technical person. So, you have layers of people in there. We're not, a highly vertical business, but we certainly have layers of people that have greater technical understanding, or much greater, thank God. Otherwise, we'd be a pretty poor race team. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I deal with those people on a people level. Yeah. So on a performance level. So it's very important. We do an extraordinary amount of work on performance, analyzing performance, the transition, and I won't take another hour of this, but of how we go about it. But in that transition of high performance to high performing, and there's so much in that, and we work incredibly hard. But I guess from a day-to-day area, my apart from the general business, I sit across all the commercial aspects of our operation, which encompasses sales, encompasses service, membership team, digital, PR, membership, content. Yep. So that's really where I sit, and I run all the commercial sales part of our business. I do all the commercial, the millions and millions of dollars that we require to go racing. And frustratingly, in this game, the technical people spend it way faster than I can bring it in. Yep. Which is an ever-going challenge. But it's never a dull moment, and we'll say it probably in sport, but no 2 days are the same, and that's absolutely true. But it's a heavy travel business as well. I'd be on the road 4 months a year, in the sheer volume of racing that we do throughout the season.
And so how has, over your time, if people are looking at motorsport, it was one of the first sports that found every single space. The drivers and the patches everywhere, and there's logos on cars. How much has the business evolved from a lot of motor racing products? They're like, hey, we want to sell more of our whatever they are. We need to be associated with this team, to that broader base, because you're moving from I'm watching because I want to hot up my car type fan to I'm watching because I'm following it as a sport, and it's becoming accessible. How is that model, I guess, shifted in your time from motor racing, which is the motor racing market, which is still obviously super important, but that wider piece of motor racing can help me access families and young adults and those kind of things.
Yeah, definitely. And you're exactly right. And I think the sport's done a very good job on marketing itself a lot differently. And the statistics say it's approximately 80% of people that attend an event are there with one other family member. And the perception that we are purely male dominated arena, that working through the door, and that probably to some degree was right in time, and therefore the brands that were attached to that, there was probably a determination that we were largely supported by garage brands. So garage brands are those traditional brands that are associated with our sport. But the sport has found that avenue to really broaden and tell the story a lot better, and with that attract these brands outside of within our team, such as the likes of Harvey Norman, that is a platform sponsor, along with LG's in that association. So and we've had the ability of the sport to do that over a long period of time. You even look like a Vodafone as an example. Vodafone, when they made all their changes because of their network issues, they had exited AFL and all other sports before they had exited motorsport, and it made a lot of sense for their business and their brand. And now they're back. They're back in a big way. They're naming rights to one of our events. The title sponsor of our category is Virgin Australia. They obviously have a big play in the ball sports, but there's a high level appeal and very strong and very broad and very engaged audience across our sport. And so, in the parallels from a pro sport point of view, there's very much the fans seem to be
not seem to be, they are. They're moving towards following like the athlete first, and we're seeing that definitely in leagues like the NBA and in football generally globally with player movements, and so they're following the player. Guys like LeBron and Ronaldo and wherever they end up. Then they follow the team and they have that passion for the team, and it's sort of the league/sport is sort of the third in line. How does that fit in supercars and with your team? Do you have that tribal nature of it's obviously going to be a challenge as you're making changes in 2019 that I'm following Cali Racing or Nissan Motorsport, and then other drivers becoming the rock stars? Are you seeing similar trends in motorsport?
Yeah, I think in history, it used to be the other way around because of that tribal nature of Ford and Holden. It was, you're a Ford person or you're a Holden person.
Yeah.
You sit there and you wear that apparel or that color of red or blue as a badge of honor.
Yep.
And you sit there with your mates and you argue till you're blue in the face about why you dislike him because he's wearing a blue shirt, vice versa. And that was the sport. And for there's been great drivers over times, the Craig Lowndes of the world who made manufacturer shifts over time.
Yep.
And people had public burnings of apparel, and his name was mud, and it's gone. How could that ever take place? But the sport in general, like a lot of sports, that change has happened, and that change has come, and these athletes are it's really primary in that, and then the team, and then there you go, the manufacturer. I mean, and that in our sport is largely around the opportunities with these new manufacturers as well, because and really that's an aging demographic, I think, that is primarily attached to these cars. I'd always tell a story that you used to go to a Bathurst car park 10 years ago, and it was Ford and Holden heaven. That's all you drove. If you didn't bring a Ford or a Holden, get a bus in, because your car would probably be rolled out of there. But these days it's every manufacturer under the sun, and this new backfill, this new audience that we have, they're not Ford and Holden people. And really it's about now with what social media as an example can give, and we can tell the story of these athletes, and that's a big step, I think, still for the sport that needs to evolve. We've got this fine line, I think, with our athletes at the moment, where they're controlled by the category in terms of what they're allowed to do, what they're allowed to say. Now certainly they can present their own story, but even in broadcast, we're never going to get to UFC. Nor would that be a good thing for our sport. But there's probably a level of shackles that needs to be removed to help broaden our sport. It's going to attract more media. I mean, at the end of the day, when someone drives into you out on the racetrack, you're pretty filthy about it. So allow people to tell that story. That it's not violence, but it's also, NASCAR's a bit different. NASCAR, they're allowed all in brawls, and that that resonates. That gets global news, and they've got their place there with that, and I don't believe that's right for our sport, but I still think there's a lot further that we can go with it and really amplify who are our athletes, who are our individuals. Our sport, Craig Lowndes, who I mentioned before, he's retiring at the end of this year, and he's such a figurehead, I guess, in terms of ambassador for our sport and for the future, and he will stay in a media perspective, but we really need to continue to tell the stories of these new athletes and people coming through. We've got some great athletes in our team.
So how do you balance? Because I think being in Melbourne as we are, and seeing how the market operates here, there's a little bit of we should be doing what works really well. And the AFL is a market leader, and I think a worldwide leader in the membership space and the way they go about it. And cricket's gone down the same path with Big Bash and this franchise model and memberships. How much do you look to, I guess, follow or steal with pride, if you will, the best of what's happening in the Australian sports scene or internationally, but then also balancing that with what's unique? Your unique proposition. How do you balance that as a team?
It's an interesting question. Even as a sport, there's a big shift in that, because even our racing product has been so traditional, I think, and you've got to be so careful, because you end up just preaching to the converted. You sit there and they watch and go, how could you change that format of the racing? That's what I've watched for 20 years. It's like, okay, great. Well, are we getting that new audience? Are they interested in that and doing that? And I think that the sport is being forward thinking in look, you look at what's happened with Big Bash. You look how successful that's been. We started night racing this year, and we had an incredible product in Sydney Motorsport Park where racing under lights. And let me tell you, it's not easy to light a racetrack with temporary lighting over the a 4 kilometre circuit or whatever you have. So
it's not cheap either.
Not cheap, and thank God it didn't rain. Otherwise, it would have probably not been the product we all wanted. We were pretty lucky on the night, but that's around where the sport is changing enormously. And this is my thing. I talk to a lot of people in and around the sport, and a lot of these people are traditionalists and things as well. You throw that out. At the end of the day, you got to have these groups of people that are talking about what is the future. If at the end of the day people want us to race at night time, and that's going to bring us X amount of people to the sport in the future, and we do that every time, well, so be it.
Yeah.
That's the product we need to present. Again, we're back to an entertainment product. So as a team within that, it's a balance, because we're a big team that's been established in this sport for a long period of time, but you've got to put faith in the category and where they're heading. And you've got to support the decisions that are being made for the long-term security of what we race. Where there's a lot at stake in teams. There's a lot that we own. It's not a members owned sport. These are privately owned teams. And there's millions. We'd have $25 million tied up in our facility. It's probably the best facility in Australia in terms of motorsport, and would be on a global stage. So, we need to trust in the process with the sport, because if it flips on us, we're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah. So where does it, because when you talk about a team and tribes, and it does lead to that membership product. How does the membership product work in your space? Because it's not the same as the AFL, where you're going to turn up every week or every second week or whatever it is, because they might only attend once potentially. So how do you bring people into your tribe and sort of follow that, building up your database, putting them on the escalator of what they can be? What does the membership product look like for you guys?
I mean, dreams to be made of if we can find the Richmond model of 100,000 fans in our membership. But it's a challenge for us because we don't control the events. We don't run those events. So when you sit there as a I mentioned them again as Callanan, I'm a member. The advantage I have is for being a member is access to games, access to finals. So in our sport, we don't have that luxury. We can't provide ticketing to events. We can provide a high level of accessibility, which is what our sport is known for. But at the end of the day, it's a model that needs to be altered. And really, our sport in a membership model was quite traditional. For whatever reason, the established traditional way of doing a membership program was $100 or whatever it might be, and you get a few benefits. You might get some merchandise, and teams may savvy it up and get some branding or different bits.
But it doesn't have the historical piece, which is the AFL and the NRL's advantage was, this is how you support your team. This is how it keeps it viable.
No, that's right.
And when people are looking at your team and going, well, they can see the money flowing through from the man. Like, what's the benefit piece?
Yeah. Well, the real thing there, exactly right. As the fact that we can't give those event tickets, and what it came down to was a host of benefits that used to exist across all the teams, where effectively, again, you're preaching to the converted. You're already passionate fans. You need to use your membership as a model to encourage people to learn more, understand more, get attached to your social channels, learn more about your business, and become more passionate in what you do. And what was happening was, for all teams, I believe, we're really embracing those people that already love you. And don't get me wrong, that's great. You want to continue doing that, but at the same time, you're not really driving yourself into new markets. So we changed the model, I think, in a lot in supercars, and a lot of teams have done so. We for one, you cut the price out. It's just a really simple, and in a lot of respects, there's a free membership model, which is it's a data play for us. It's an opportunity for us to start the conversation, which is so critically important. And when people do come to events, we give them an experience like no other, a level of accessibility like no other. And what I mean by that is when you are a ball sport, as a passionate Carlton fan, that my ability to go and engage with that team at a game is so limited.
Yep.
I see them run out through the race. I see them go back. Supercars is different. You have the ability to come within the inner sanctum, touch and feel the products. The drivers are out there signing. You can come out on the grid before the race, which is literally like standing next to the players on the ground before the game goes. Now, that's not everyone gets that, but a lot of people do get that opportunity. So we convey that in a different model, and we bought this program out from America. It's always about what's new, what's innovative, what's different from not just our sport in bringing that innovation, but what's new to this market. And we had this program, Fan Maker, which was all about rewarding fans for their support and communication with the team. So as they shared our content and put stuff out there, we're getting points, and we're putting promotions up there that they were like a frequent flyer program. And that just changed the conversation for us. That just allowed us to get mass audience in, big database play. We have this huge social footprint, which is almost, as an example, 700,000 on our Facebook channel, which people can't believe when we talk about that when they don't know much about motorsport. But this allowed us to have a different conversation with people, and that worked extremely well for us. And whilst we're never going to get to the 100,000 member mark unless we're doing it all free, it still provides a good base and a new platform which we work from.
But it is about, I guess, framing it in the same way that it has happened in professional sports, that it becomes an identity piece. That I'm a Collingwood person, or you're a Carlton person. To have someone say, socially, I'm putting my hand up, and I can see that I'm a strong follower, I'm a supporter of Nissan Motorsport. And so it starts going back to almost that Ford Holden thing to say, I'm backing the team.
Definitely.
And rallying behind whatever driver you put in the car. And that illogical, we'll do well this year. That sports fans, once they have locked it into their identity, that part of their identity, it's key.
Definitely. And I think for us, you've got to make that conversation beyond just, because you love that, you must love cars. You must be a mechanic. You must have your own car in your garage that you tinker with. You've got to find so many different levels that you can invoke that passion from people. And, we work pretty hard at that, with the brands of our drivers, with the I guess the tone of the team, and how we communicate with people, how we engage with people at events to make sure they have that passion. And God bless the supercar fans. They do walk around in public with their apparel on here, there, and everywhere, and love to tell the story. But that is one segment of our audience, and we work pretty hard on finding what are the other ways that we can find that. We can say people that will happily and promote our business and say they are a passionate fan.
So one of the things that keeps sports administrators awake at night is, where's our next fans? Like, these guys love us, or this group loves us. But what does the 8-year-old, what are they going to be watching in 20 years? What does the 14, 15, 16-year-old, are they going to be engaged in 5 years' time? So it's in this fan development. You've sort of spoken about this future of the fan thing previously. Does it keep you up at night? And what do you do to sort of mitigate that?
Yeah, big time. That's and the reality of our sport is, the primary fan is sort of that 25, 30 mark up to 55 is that core segment that you have there.
Yep.
Where we need to really drive that message home is in the youth market. It's not just about 18-year-olds, it's not 16-year-olds, it is this fan of the future, and it's not just about the dad that's still coming and bringing his young kids along. How do we excite them? How do we make this product relevant for them when there is so much colour and noise? There is so much sport in Australia. There's so much to get to,
and there's so much people pitching at them, either as a participation point of view, whether it's you can do a cricket program or a football program or an AFL or NRL, and so they're trying to develop them potentially as a player. They've got that twofold thing, and as a fan. It's tough because you can't say, "Hey, little Jimmy, hop in the car, do a hot lap."
That's right. Does dad have $1 million to go racing? And that's from a couple of points there. Participation is challenging in our sport. because it is expensive. And, the realities of this sport is, you follow the pathway. If you were wanting to be a driver is, typical, a go-kart.
Yep.
Now, a top-level go-kart team is spending $100,000 a year.
Yep.
You go to a Formula Ford product after that, you're spending $200,000 a year. You go to a development series product, which is our feeder series, or a Porsche product, you're spending $400,000-500,000 a year. Then if you're trying to get into, as a young kid, go into main series, it can cost you $1 million a year to get your seat. Now, this is this happens everywhere in motorsport around the world. It's a very expensive sport to go and compete. So the fact of participation for us is a challenge. We don't have the ability to go to the oval and get out there and you kick around with your kids and they feel the leather and have that first go at it. So the programs such as esports is a real opportunity for us, and the sport is starting to have a serious crack in that space. There's a lot of opportunity for us because it is a sport that is relevant. You can, for one, you can go that virtual to reality route. I'll touch on that a little more in a second. But it's different from people play a FIFA or whatever, or NBA on their games. They're not suddenly going to go play in the NBA, and that's not going to work. Or in the other forms of esports, Counter-Strike or League of Legends or whatever exists there. There's no relative aspect to that. Where motorsport is really different, and motorsport games are enormous in Australia. They're enormous globally, and
they're effectively training you potentially to get into a car.
And it's been proven. I mean, we've done this. So there is a program globally called GT Academy. Now, GT Academy is a formulation of a relationship between Nissan and PlayStation. It was created by Nissan, a guy called Darren Cox in Europe, who used to be the global head of motorsport for Nissan. And that was about showing that it's possible. There is this transition. And this program, and to give you an example, we ran for a number of years. We ran that whole program on behalf of Nissan and PlayStation. There's online components to it. And it's GT4. It's the game that you can go and buy for $80, $90. You play in your bedroom, you do whatever. Yeah, you can use your hand controller, you can have your simulator at home. It's all applicable. Yep. And for what happened with that sport, we had Australia was attached to this global competition, and finalists went to the UK, where you step out of the simulator and you get in real road cars. And at the end of the day, this was 2 years ago, an Australian guy called Matt Simmons won the global competition. This guy was an Australia Post employee. He was literally a postie driving around delivering mail. He probably just did it a little more quickly than his fans, so he had a good job at Australia Post. I'm sure they're sad to see him go. But he became a global Nissan driver. He went from the previous year sitting in his bedroom playing his games. I think his girlfriend had the shits with him and was sick of how much he was doing. But he said, I bet you, he said, one day, darling, I'm going to get somewhere. And he did. He became a global Nissan driver, drove in the Blancpain series overseas, racing at Le Mans, some of the biggest racetracks in the world. And it's genuine. These people that are playing these games, the quality of the games that's there, it really resonates. And now the sport is having a big play in this space. It had a dabble last year where it launched an esports a final that took place at Bathurst at our signature event, and got some gamers along, and really was just the chance for people to sample the product. This year they've had a much bigger play in the space. It's predominantly online. There was an event activation that took place at Bathurst, but now it's an opportunity to really engage this audience. It takes the product into their home. Yeah. And the tracks are the same. The cars look the same. The color, the excitement, and it's starting to merge those worlds really closely. Yeah. A lot of relevance in what they're doing. And for us as a team, we need to consider how we play that. And right now we're in that space of, are we having a representative, like many EPL teams or such?
So it's sort of similar to, because there's obviously really strong crossover between playing the game and watching and being a fan. It's very similar to, the NBA, NBA 2K, and how the NBA teams are getting into esports via that method. That's the sort of the next logical step for you to have. Here's our 4 drivers that are driving the physical cars, and here's a couple of esport athletes that are driving us in the league as such online.
100%. And I think you look at the AFL teams. There's a couple that are investing in big esports teams that they've got nothing to do with football.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, your Essendons and
Adelaide, but
that are there. And I'm sure there's relevance. There's a mass audience that allows them to talk to. For us, we're talking directly to an audience.
It's an audience extension piece
100%.
in your world, whereas, you know, for the Bombers and Adelaide sort of getting into the League Legends, it's an additional audience. There doesn't have to be crossover.
Yeah,
it's an attractive audience and some sponsor opportunities in that space, but it's not, you know, ability to, you know, talk to another fan segment, so to speak.
Definitely. And the opportunities that exist for us there is, you know, the play is probably, say, an individual first. You know, there's a lot of excitement around that, I think, from the fans, but media around what that means. And the opportunity is we can put these people in our cars.
Yeah.
You know, that you need a bit of training, you need a bit of work, or you can put them in a high performance road vehicle or something, and you start the journey, and you're giving people this, you know, it's genuine.
Yeah.
You're giving people this genuine connection around their enjoyment, their love, their passion, their fun. They race their mates, but hey, guess what? You can actually be a global driver, and we start on that journey. We support you. We take them through, and it just gives us a new channel as a team to start talking to a completely new audience for us. And, you know, that transcends manufacturer. That's anything. That's just the people that are playing online. They're not attached to driving a Holden, Nissan, Ford supercar.
And it is a new audience, because they're gamers that are playing a game that happens to be your sport.
Yep.
What's been the reception of, you know, I guess the rusted on rev heads that are like, they've been following the sport forever and go, this isn't the real stuff, like, you know, which is what's this stuff internet, which is a normal response. What's been the response from those fans initially? Because that's not what the product's for, but you've also got to cater to and help them understand that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I think they're encouraged by it. They see the relevance of what it is. They understand for the future of the sport these things need to occur. Do they understand it all? Not necessarily. I don't think, but I think they certainly see the value. We have no doubt helped supercars in their transition to esports with the GT Academy program, because it's the story already told. We've shown that this, and you know, was well covered globally about a guy that was delivering mail was now a global Nissan factory driver. Yeah. And you know, it's not just pie in the sky. It's not just, you know, this guy is going to be a champion. It's been done, and it's been delivered numerous times. There's a guy overseas, Jan Mardenborough, who, same story. He was he was an English kid who now was once playing in his bedroom, and now he's on the Red Bull F1 feeder program. Yep. So that's beyond Nissan now, just in terms of where they've been able to nurture him as an athlete and help him and support him on his journey. He's on the F1 program. I mean, that's crazy. You know, these games are at that level that it actually it's genuine.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, you know, talking about before that the getting the attention of, you know, the consistency and the content play between races, it fits in really nicely in that space to be able to say, you know, there's not as much setup to say, hey, we're going to run a race or these kind of things, and you know, once the scheduling sort of smooths out, those motor racing fans they would love 47 races a year, right? Logistically, a nightmare, right? But that's the spot where esports can fill that space and fill those gaps. And it's like, you know, it helps fill out the calendar.
And the other thing that supports it too is drivers off their own bat are entering themselves. Yeah. You know, you're racing against the supercar drivers of the world, and you know they do it from a fun perspective.
They're very competitive though. They don't like to lose.
They don't like to lose, but it's also, you know, how cool's that? The guy that you can see and you respect and you love in terms of the athlete. Yeah. You can be racing door to door with that person as you go through, you know, each segment of the esports series. What an asset for us as a sport. And you're right, that helps us fill the gap. You know, a lot of people, you're watching the racing like as if you're watching a race weekend.
Before we wrap up, what are your big plans to finish up this year? But what are your big plans for, say, 2019?
Yeah, for us as a product, you know, we need to re-establish ourselves with the exit of Nissan. Where it's the Kelly Racing brand is underlying is what you know, we were originally raced under the title as a team. We need to re-cement that brand in the market. It's a consideration around a manufacturer for us in the future. What is that? And the technical rules that help support that. That's a big play for us. There's a huge play for us in with our partnerships at the moment, and just helping to really complete that circle and tie our associations into the sales funnel a lot more. We're doing an enormous amount in that lead nurture space now about generating big database, working with a local business here in Victoria, Green Room, who work across a number of national sports, about how we can create effective promotions that generate mass database that give us a leverage point to continue a conversation, nurture them towards purchase decisions, and with the scrutiny across ROI for brands these days, you've got to complete that. And that's a huge play for us right now. And it's very effective. It's working extremely well. We find there's relevance across a vast number of brands. We're doing from LG TVs to insurance for Steadfast, one of our major partners at the moment. And they're working extremely well, but allows us also to get our brand into new markets. We're for that segment of insurance where, we're getting databases in excess of 15,000 around these sort of 8 to 10 week promotions, and just allows us to continue the story of what we do.
Yeah, definitely. Getting to the Sports Geek closing 5, Nick Ryan. I've been starting to remember to say people's names more often because I've been hearing people say, "Oh yeah, I really like that podcast with that guy from so and so." I'm like, so this is Nick. Closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
I think for me, the first one I remember was it would have been a Carlton game when I was a kid. One of my best mates at school, his dad was on the committee of Carlton and used to take us to the post-game celebrations and functions. The only reason I really remember it is I was that wily little kid with an autograph book walking along the lines, and a guy called Adrian Gleason that was there. He stopped me when I was getting the autograph and he said, "Do you know who I am?" And I just looked there, deer in the headlights, and that never left me. I sat there going...
So when's that? This is like late 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, correct. So I was there just in awe of all these athletes and standing around, and that's my first memory of sport, and somehow I still got connected to Carlton and never left after that period of time. But that was probably daunting for me at that point.
Well, it must be in that time at least, there could have been a chance. I was actually in one of the little ticket boxes at Princes Park because one of my uncles works there in the finance space. And that was one of the gigs I did during uni years and just to give the context, I think it was $12.50 for an adult and $2.50 for a kid under 5. For a kid under 5s was free. Like that's just from a context of what the pricing was, but it was all cash. It was all people were handing over cash and giving them the change and giving them an actual paper ticket that got snibbed back at Princes Park back in the day. You would have been to a few sports events, and as we said earlier, the supercars keep upping the game of the event. Do you have a favourite, either a food memory or a go-to food?
Look, probably not so much around. Look, Supercars does do a very good job in that space, and making sure that there's a great offering for the fans. I'm probably a little bit different at sporting events. We take all our own chefs and everyone with us, so I get a bit of luxury on that side of things for meals. For me, when I go, my thing that I always go to when I go to AFL games, I go to the MCG. I'm a member there. And I walk up, as soon as I walk in, I walk up the first escalator, go to the Percy Beans bar. Tucked in the corner is this roast roll.
Yep.
And you get roast roll, gravy, side of chips, and coleslaw. And I sit there, I put my headphones in, and
you're good.
Leave me alone.
Yep. Terrific. What's the first app you open in the morning?
For me, it's always news as a snapshot, but then it's also sport, our sport. So across supercar racing, and I do that for the reason of knowing.
So you're opening the Supercars app?
Yeah, correct. Yep. So it's just about and another one called Speed Cafe in our sport. Just making sure I'm aware of any surprises that might come up in the morning. There's some pretty savvy media people around our sport, so I've just make sure, as well as general news, I've got a very good read before I get near the office about what's maybe happened overnight that may be relevant to us.
And is there someone that you would suggest the podcast listeners should follow, and why?
There's probably a couple of people on Twitter that I I'd like to follow.
Yep.
One of those is Rob Mills from Gemba.
Yep.
Rob, just with his ongoing stats relating to sports
Yep.
and insights that he provides.
I think Rob Millsy or...
Yeah,
I think that's
it's
his
Rob
Twitter,
Millsy,
Twitter
something
handle.
like that.
Yep.
He's really interesting and gives really great insights. Another guy I like to follow is his name is Chris Smith. He's an esports guy. He founded the Australian Esports Association, Business of Games. His handles something like Chris Mayo.
I think it's Chris Mayo. Yeah, I actually caught up with him at the EGAA conference just last week.
Yeah, he's he's possibly the most passionate person about esports. Don't prompt him on anything but esports because he won't talk to you about it. But just his insights to the esports market, which is broader than just what we do, but is just across the whole landscape and Australia as that evolves. For anyone that's excited by esports or interested in it, he's a very good starting point.
Yeah, definitely. He's got a podcast, Business in Games, where he's regularly chatting with people as well. What social media platform is your MVP? And so you've got the opportunity to answer that as yourself, Nick.
Sure.
And also, from the team point of view, what's the platform that's working the best for the team?
I'll start there. For team, it's Facebook for us. That has been hugely successful. As I mentioned before, almost 700,000 followers on that platform. But, followers means not a great deal. It's all about the engagement rates, and that's the ideal platform for us to get our message across and the content that we deliver. For me personally, it sits between Instagram and Twitter. I think I'm covering all the primary ones here.
Yep.
It depends what I'm doing. Instagram's a bit of fun, and it allows me to catch up with all my American sport from overnight when I get up in the morning, just to see. On that, and it's how has Supercars sort of, because we're seeing stacks of engagement in the story space on Insta. Are you seeing the same, behind the scenes access, sharing more and more, and deeper engagement, and just crazy numbers comparatively? Correct. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And it much relates to my consumption. I sit there and if you went through my Instagram and looked at the amount of athletes I follow now, just around those incredible insights. I love watching Ben Simmons and the way he goes about things, or you can go through a number of sports that you do it in, and you feel like these people. I'm a huge UFC fan, and you see the stuff that's out in there and the fighting and everything going on, but understanding the personalities and the people behind it, and that's very much the same for our sport. Conveying the personalities, who these people are, and what the message is. So in Instagram for me, that's what I love. But then Twitter also has its place. Like I'll go to Trade Week that was going on. Twitter was up a lot for me. Vying for Dylan Shield to get to Carlton.
It's grand final week for Carlton. Carlton fans.
That's what I say to all my co-Carlton fans. This is our time of year. We almost don't want to play. This is the period of the year that we can get most excited by, because who have we brought in and what's the potential? And right now, we'd rather just play in the potential space.
Yeah. So where can people follow you? What are your handles, and what's the best platform?
Yeah, the most for me and where I would be active would be in the Twitter space, which I think is Nick Ryan O, just an O on the end of Nick Ryan. That's probably where you'll see any relevant content. You probably don't want to look at Instagram because you might just see my kids. So, and
then you're on LinkedIn, and we'll put
and LinkedIn's a big one. Yeah, but LinkedIn's the other one for me, where you'll see a bit of space there. So, look, love to connect with anyone. Building our network is primary to this, and certainly the work you do, which I love around having a global connection with so many different people, is really exciting. So,
which is the other place where you can connect as a Sports Geek Nation member. You can. We'll have to be getting you on to do some of the AMA sessions, but thank you for being part of the community. And it's really good seeing, I guess, people being able to connect. Just overnight, Tim Baker from Adelaide United and Paul Rogers from AS Roma were DMing about the FFA Cup, and then AS Roma sent him a tweet and said congratulations.
Yeah, awesome.
And that's a cool kind of I just saw it coming through on my feed. But sort of making those connections with people to have those little digital successes, and it really means a lot to the behind the scenes and the staff to be able to say, hey, look what we did. We connected with this big brand, and so whether we helped facilitate that, I'm not going to take the credit, but it's really awesome to see guys. it's really awesome to see guys like Tim and Paul being able to connect. And, that's one of the byproducts, I think, of the community offers. So if you're part of the community already, reach out to Nick, ask him all the questions around we discussed, motorsport, marketing campaigns, stuff around membership, obviously esports. Best of luck for the rest of the year, and 2019 we'll watch with interest.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to chat.
New workshops on audience, content, distribution, valuation, and pitch following Sports Geek's Digital to Dollars process. Go to digitaltodollars.com.
Thanks again to Nick Ryan from Nissan Motorsport. As he said, you can send him a tweet, Nick Ryan O. Ryan O at the end. Send him a tweet, tell him that you listened, or connect with him and talk to him on Sports Geek Nation in the Slack. You'll be able to reach out to Nick to find out more about what we discussed around the development of the supercar brand and the changes and the stuff they're doing from a marketing point of view, and how things are changing, and potentially even talking to him about esports and some of the things. It's very similar to what the conversation with Craig Neeb when I discussed with him from a NASCAR point of view. A few things to wrap up. Obviously, if you want to join Nick and other smart people who have joined in Sports Geek Nation, you can go to sportsgeeknation.com to sign up. There's a members area where we are now saving full transcripts of the AMAs. So they ask me anything. And so I've actually had a few people ask, what is an AMA? And so it's an opportunity for one of the members to put up their hand and say, look, I'll answer any question that's put up. So if you're in the Slack, simply go to the AMA channel. You can just click on the AMA hashtag when I post it. That will drive you into a channel, and you can join any channel. So, if you've been in Slack for a while and haven't looked at what channels are available, please do so. Go and check it out. And then it's pretty much ask a question. Tag the guest. Recent guests being John McCauley, Jeff Chatterton. Liam is up from Basketball Australia this week. So, please check it out. We'd love to have you. Love to have you part of Sports Geek Nation. As always, one last thing: the Digital Dollars workshop. For those of you who work in AFL land, we're running that for the AFL on November 16. So if you have not booked in for that, please do so. I'd love to see some familiar faces there. Looking forward to talking to a bunch of different clubs and sort of going through the process of knowing your audience, knowing your content, knowing your distribution, knowing your valuation, and knowing your pitch. And as I've said previously, my goal is for digital to be the number one revenue driver for sports by 2030. So I hope you can come along for the ride. That's it for me for this week. As always, please reach out to my guest on this week's episode, Nick Ryan. And if you need anything from me, please get in touch. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com is my email. And more than happy to catch up and talk to podcast listeners. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Join Sports Geek Nation access to exclusive Slack and Facebook groups with regular Q&A sessions with Sean Callanan. Go to sportsgeeknation.com to join. Need help with your digital rate card? Not sure how to price your assets? Is there a disconnect between digital and commercial? That is where Sean works best, in digital divorce counselor mode. Book a time for a call with Sean to discuss the Sports Geek process. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.